with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa. Everybody got opinions. Let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that. Saying you the best. Stop that, phony, I am not that. Yeah. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should spend a little less time with the women on your arms and a little bit more with your career. I ain't saying I'm the best, but I should be in the top 10. Give me a list of names, I'ma top them. I'm just playing with you, I don't care what the top is. Leave me at the bottom, let me work for it. You ain't never gonna find another
Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist is back on Monday.
I ain't leaving.
Jason, first of all, how was vacation? Was it a good week off?
Staycation.
A staycation, okay.
Obviously, and yeah, because the past 2 weeks I've been quote on vacation, but it's been at home. Because originally these 2 weeks I was supposed to be in Europe, before this whole pandemic, I guess, happened.
Yeah, where were you going again over there?
I was supposed to go to Germany for 2 weeks and then Austria for a week.
Okay.
For my cousin who lives in Germany, she was getting married in Austria, so we were going to go for a couple weeks to do some sightseeing and then go to the wedding. So that's been delayed because obviously her side of the family still lives here in the stateside. Her fiance, they actually went ahead and got married during the pandemic because they're like, well, we don't know when we're going to be able to have a big get together, so let's go ahead and. But his side of the family's from Austria, and yeah, I mean we were already making the plans to do it, and instead my past 2 weeks was spent cleaning out the garage, mowing the yard, and honestly, this past week was so enjoyable because I detoxed.
Mm-hmm. Explain.
I got rid of social media on my phone. No Facebook, no Twitter, no nothing. Did not watch any news. Did not watch any sports. I did not. The only stuff I watched a couple of YouTube stuff. The video game stuff that I watch on YouTube, and played games with my nephews and whatnot. It wasn't until yesterday I opened, I re-downloaded everything because I was like, I got to have it for work. And I'm just like, I turned to my wife and was like, holy crap, did I miss out a lot?
Yeah.
Just on the surface, because I was like, wait. Patrick Holmes was picked to finish, was the fourth best player.
Hey.
And then I followed that down the line. I was like, whoa, he's a part of the Royals now?
Yeah, right. You didn't see that either.
No. I did not see any of that until yesterday.
I wish you could, and I'm going to encourage you to go listen, okay? Because I did, let's see, it was the show by myself for the first hour, and then Tom came in on Wednesday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday.
Thursday, I mean, yeah. So Thursday, I end the first hour, and I think I just lit into Patrick Mahomes being number 4. Okay, so much so that Tom comes in, he's like, you gotta chill, and I was like, no. Like, so I encourage you. You gotta go on my YouTube page and look it up and see what you think about it, because it blew my mind that he didn't actually move from where he was on the list previous after what he did. So.
Well, that's what's funny, because everyone's like, well, it's because Lamar lit up the NFL. It's like, okay, when Mahomes did it, when he won MVP, which we had better stats than Lamar did last year.
Yeah.
It was okay. At best, he's 4th. It's like, what? How does this work?
They still put him behind a defensive lineman and Russell Wilson. I'm like, there's some things where I'm like, maybe I could find it, but and
I'll concede. I agree with some of the some of the ESPN videos I watched of former NFL players. I can see the argument of why Arnold is ahead of him.
Okay,
Aaron Donald, because the difference between him and, let's admit it, Chris Jones is number 2, is a pretty wide gap.
Yeah, but I consider it off of, because Aaron Donald can change a game. We know that.
Right.
Patrick Mahomes can not only change a game, he can change a season. Like, Aaron Donald's numbers were good last year, but they weren't Aaron Donald type. You know what I'm saying?
And that's why, though, I look at, that's why I actually picked a defensive lineman as my Heisman winner last year.
Because of how much they disrupt.
Right. Well, and because it's more difficult for them to have an impact, because
especially today,
when you're a quarterback, you touch the ball. When you're on offense, every single snap, unless it's some wildcat play or whatever, the quarterback touches the ball half of the game for your team.
Right.
When you're a defensive player, defensive lineman, if you're lucky to touch the ball, it's if you strip, sack or pick or something like that, which is a big moment in itself. But you're still able, a guy like him and even Chris Jones are able to disrupt so much that they are considered game changers, even though they don't touch the ball.
Yeah. So, and I give a ton of credit to defensive linemen now too, because you're not allowed to literally touch the quarterback half the time.
Well, and you're not allowed to do the Derek Thomas rule. You're not able to flinch to force offsides and stuff like that. You're not allowed. I mean, the game is built for offense.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I understand that and I respect that.
Yep.
But that's why I think someone like Aaron Donald is so elite and I can see the argument of why he should be ahead of all three of those quarterbacks at the top, because it's hard to be that elite on the defensive side of the ball because the rules are made to prevent you from being that elite.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as far as Lamar Jackson, he was fun to watch. He reminds me almost of a Michael Vick. But you know what?
Yeah.
How many championships Michael Vick win?
Right, and that was kind of my argument too, was he's going to be successful for as long as his legs hold out, but until he can consistently throw the ball on third down and long enough to where he can get success in a playoff game. Because people that I talk to that are Ravens fans, because I know plenty, and they say, what are you talking about? He wasn't a huge part of the losses. Not like he was a big part of the losses in both playoff games. Okay, this wasn't on his defense and everybody else. I know he doesn't have a ton of weapons, but still.
Go back to the regular season game against the Chiefs.
Right.
And that was before the Chiefs' defens was
they still
the second half of the year. They were disruptive. I wrote a story on Emmanuel Ogbah. I had done an interview with him, and it was actually, I believe, the weekend after Baltimore, because he was able to get. It wasn't just Chris Jones and Frank Clark, and again, this was when Frank Clark wasn't. It was around the time that they figured out he had the pinched nerve or whatever it was that he'd been dealing with.
Yeah,
like all these issues that he's had. So I mean, he wasn't the elite guy that we saw the second half of the season, and they still were able to just stuff him. I mean, they forced Lamar Jackson in that game. If you go back to that game, you will see some bad play. You will see Tim Tebow type of plays and throws from the quarterback. So that's why I get when he went up against some really bad opponents, he made them look even worse.
Yeah.
But again, he lost in the playoffs. He lost to the Super Bowl champions with a defense at the time that was not a top 20 defense.
And that was the same game, year one there, the first time they played with Patrick Mahomes there. No-look pass, same game where he made that crazy across-the-body play to Tyreek that kind of sealed it down there. So a lot of that was Patrick Mahomes, too, being better.
Yeah.
I mean, he just so that's where, I'm like, he's number one.
Yeah, and then the argument for Russell Wilson, I'm getting so tired of. Oh, he doesn't have the talent. He doesn't have the talent.
That's not true. Yeah.
I would take, honestly, last year, you go back to last year, I would take any of the running backs that Seattle had before I would take Damian Williams and Sean McCoy.
I love,
let's be honest.
I love Chris Carson, and I love Rashad Penny. And even their, I forgot their other third string that came in and made a difference there. But all those guys, and they got great receivers.
And what's funny is I've heard people's like, well, because what would he have if he had Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Sammy Watkins? And I'm like, okay, do we all recognize that Sammy Watkins is not? He's not a number two.
People love to throw in Sammy Watkins, and I'm like,
he's a former first round pick that. He had, 2 touchdowns in week 1 when Tyreek Hill went down with injury, and then never scored the rest of the season.
He showed up in the Super Bowl, and that was it. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can argue, yes, the Chiefs have the better number 1 wide receiver and the better tight end, but you can't say that he didn't have a good tight end. Heck, they had several good tight ends.
Yeah.
And they had probably, you can honestly argue, a deeper wide receiver core when you have Lockett, Metcalf, Doug Baldwin, stuff like that. I mean, they had, more consistent depth at wide receiver than the Chiefs, who, when Tyreek Hill went down, who was their leading wide receiver?
Yeah, they were with, they had Demarcus Robinson, they had McCole Hardman. I mean, that guy's, he's still coming on,
But that's the crazy thing is if you go back in all those games, which the Chiefs won most of, I think they won all of them with Tyreek Hill down, you didn't have the elite numbers from wide receivers, but you still had a quarterback putting up numbers.
That's why part of my argument too is you could throw him on any team; he's going to make other guys good. So this weekend, how much sports did you digest anything? Nothing at all. I'm surprised because it all came back at the same time, at least in major sports for a while.
No, I literally did not watch any sports, read any sports. I mean, I detoxed because I was like, my thing is I need to get away from just the toxicity of the pandemic, of politics, of sports. I just need to get away.
Right, and
I will say, it was refreshing.
Yeah, no, I've heard people that have taken days off specifically from Twitter and social media, and that's the response. It's like, wow, that felt good. And but it's kind of like you said too, you know, if I could go do something for 4 or 5 hours, not check my phone, but I get on Twitter and it's like, oh my gosh, like you just said, look what I missed, you know. So it is pretty crazy.
But at the same time, like yesterday, I'm just like,
yeah.
It was like, yeah, I missed a lot, but I'm like, the world moved on.
Yeah,
and I think that's the biggest thing that I probably took away from this past week is whatever it is, politics, the COVID, sports. Everyone's going to have a side. Everyone's going to stick to their side, and ultimately, we're going to piss and moan about this for a day or two, and then something else is going to come along, and we're going to find something else to piss and moan about.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
And that's really what I realized from this is like by not watching or anything last week. I'm like, man, how much just pissing and moaning I didn't have to deal with, and that was nice.
It was so Major League Baseball is already going on. The NHL.
I will say that the last thing I remember reading was the first initial Marlins having to cancel because of the COVID stuff.
So the Cardinals really took over, unfortunately for myself, as the next man up. We'll get to that, but Major League Baseball is still going on. The NHL popped off this weekend. I thought it was really good, but unfortunately, again, for me,
I saw the clip of the Blues-Avs finish.
I'm telling you,
what a finish.
My sports world is crumbling around me in St. Louis. And then on top of that, NFL training camps.
Yeah.
We got the NBA in full swing.
Oh, the other thing I didn't find out until yesterday, Damian Williams opting out.
Yeah, I actually left it on my list to get to, hopefully, at some point with you, because I want to see what you thought about it. I was sitting there talking to Tom as well. I think that was Thursday or Wednesday, actually. We're talking about actually guys that had opted out in the Patriots. And I sit there and
I've heard that number is getting up there.
It is. I get the update and it says Damian Williams is out now. I'm like, to me, actually, that might be the biggest name in the National Football League that has said, I'm not playing so far, especially on the offensive side, I think.
I will say, though, I think part of it has to do with the reality that he may not have been the starter the entire season.
Said the exact same thing. I think there was some writing on the wall to him. At some point, he might have started the season starter, but I don't see a way where Clyde Edwards-Helaire, besides getting injured, doesn't take over that.
Because I think he looked at last year. He saw LaShawn McCoy was supposed to come in and be the number one guy, and it was we're going to rest him for the playoffs, and then he never plays the second half of the season. Right. If I'm Damian Williams, I'm like, I'm LaShawn McCoy now. I'm expendable.
By the way, LaShawn McCoy found a new team as well. Yeah. I'll let you.
Is he back to the Bills?
No, he's not back to the Bills.
Okay.
He's in the same. No, actually, he's not. I want to say because I thought of the quarterback. He's with Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he's going to be a part of Tom Brady's. So we always said that the Bucs needed a running back. That was their next piece. And LaShawn McCoy's now the next piece.
So I can't wait till the playoffs or the Super Bowl when they're going up against the Chiefs. And LaShawn McCoy has the ball punched out, and that's the game.
Because he carries it like a fruit.
Oh, I think the way they say is he carries it like a loaf of bread.
Yeah, a loaf of bread. That's a good way. Holds it out. Yeah. So I haven't done it yet, but I want to combine the age of Tom Brady, Gronkowski, LaShawn McCoy all together and see what old man I come up with there.
Dude, if you put those three guys back into 2010 NFL, Dynasty.
That's what I saw somebody say, oh my gosh, 2010's a crazy year when this happened. I was like, it's so true. Like, it's back.
But no, Damian Williams, I think the biggest thing that's a huge thing for Helaire, because now it's his. I
100%.
think they'll try to utilize Darwin Thompson some, but your bell cow is Helaire. And again, if we have the season for fantasy football, that means his stock is through the roof right now. It went
way up. I think I even mentioned that he's going to be not anymore just a sleeper. I mean, I'm thinking a top running back prospect. You can grab him. And they signed Washington from the Raiders. Right. So you've got him and Darwin Thompson, who will be a good change of pace back. But there's no way to me he's not. Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't going to be your 3 down.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt, he's starting game one.
He's young. The reports initially out of Kansas City was that he's already got the playbook down and said it wasn't a hard playbook to learn. Everyone was like, no one's ever said that about Andy Reid's playbook, and he did. So it's really exciting.
And I guess they said a lot of it is because it was a similar system run at LSU.
It is. I mean, he's really the last piece to this puzzle for a lot of people. All right, when we get on here in this this next segment, a ton of stuff to get to. The Big 12 is meeting in 2 hours to possibly decide what's going to go on with the fall sports this year and what to do with football most prevalent there. And then later on, there's a huge mess going on in the Pac-12. We're going to dive deep into that. And the Pac-12 players threatening to boycott. We'll tell you what that's all about. Brand new allegations coming out of a Big 12 school regarding their head coach, and so much more still to come here on the Afternoon Sports Drive.
Well, I'm not trying to get in the way. Minding my own, got nothing to say about nobody. That's right, nobody. Don't shake my tree, don't rattle my cage. You and me will be on the same page.
Welcome back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler, Jason Elmquist here on Monday. We just dive into the month of August, getting closer and closer, hopefully, to college football. We'll talk more about that here later on. The Big 12 obviously meeting tonight. That's big. I think, I mentioned that Bob Bowlesby initially said when all this went down with the SEC, he responded with, look, we're meeting Monday night, but I can't guarantee an answer comes out of Monday night's meeting. I have to think it probably does by this point, at least not maybe sometime this week. We might not hear anything tonight, but I would have to think like this is the week, because
they kept saying early August.
They did, and I completely agree with what he said the entire time about patience. Like that's what I've been here for. I respect it. I get it. But yeah, where's the time? Like, okay, we've waited to maybe as long as we possibly can. Teams got to know what they're doing in week 0 or week 1, what's going on. In your mind, because it's now been floated here for all these possibilities. We know that the normal schedule is still a possibility. The 9 games plus 1 is still a possibility. There's been floated a rumor about 9 games plus 2 as a possibility as well. Where do you see the Big 12 going with this?
That's a good question, because just even here within Oklahoma State, seems to be conflicting reports, because Bill Haston over at Tulsa World had a story yesterday that had some quotes from Burns Hargis, and then what was speculated to be the thought process of Mike Holder. And in the column, it was Mike Holder said that he wants, Mike Holder, it's believed that Mike Holder wants, 12-game season. But then he quotes Burns Hargis, the president of the university, and technically Mike's boss, saying that he finds it hard for there to be a 12-game season. So I think what we're finding out is no one has the answer still.
Yeah, so maybe this really is a lot of a hash it out meeting tonight. Let's see what everybody's got. Let's put all the options out there, and let's get some sort of maybe a vote. We don't have to release it, but let's get a vote.
Right, because here's the thing. I think presidents and probably ADs are debating is, do we take the approach of the other Power 5 conferences of let's start it late September, but you risk not even getting there, because if the kids come on campus, there's a spike, boom, you're shutting down everything, not just football, you're shutting down the entire campus, and then boom, there goes the season. Or do we try to go earlier like OU and TCU have tried to do with their schedule of setting it up for a week earlier? That way we can get a game or two in, maybe get a little bit of revenue, and then maybe if the spike, we hear a spike coming, and we've at least played a game or two to kind of even things out for now. I mean,
I don't know about you, but that seems fine to me, is even going with the week 0 games, because I think what we're seeing right now is it looks like that's definitely a possibility that you could probably get that done, right?
Yeah.
You could probably get a couple of games in, and if it had to stop there, then that's something you do when you cross that bridge. But that's why when you look at the SEC, what they did, like, we know why they did it, because they don't have to have non-conference games. Like, nobody cares,
right.
But the Big 12, it's like they have this opportunity right now. There's the last ones left. If they're saying if we could actually pull this off, or at least attempt to even start earlier, and all of a sudden all the eyes on Power 5 schools are on the Big 12 of all things too, it's like that's good for the conference as a whole. Now, we know the risk involved, but that you could definitely, I think, start it that way. And
then I think it was in the same column that Hargis was actually like, he didn't say that it's going to happen, but he mentioned kind of offhandedly the possibility of finishing up in the spring.
Right.
That possibility as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is like, again, we don't know. Like, you can say we're going to start week 0, but, and I think it was Bowlesby was quoted saying, the data that was, worth gold a month ago is worth a turd now.
Right.
Well, in a month from now, when the season's supposed to start, we may find out that we're still basing it off turds.
Yeah, you could, ultimately start it in week 0, but if you went and finished it in the spring, there would be a lot of those players that played week 0 that wouldn't be playing in the spring. I really think that's the case. Yeah. So that's something you'd have to take. But you say, hey, does that mean if we still get games in, we still get games in, right?
Well, and in my other argument that I actually made to you and Tom before we hopped on air, we're seeing at the MLB level adults who make a lot of money, who don't have the maturity to stay in a hotel room, avoid making sure that social distancing so you can continue to have a season. They can't do that. Are we really expecting college kids who are not getting paid anything to abide by all the rules of don't go hang out with friends, don't go out to the bars, don't do anything? You literally become you aren't even a student athlete anymore. You are 100% an athlete because you don't get the opportunity of being the student aspect.
So, and if this was a workplace type environment like the NFL, okay, if this was your job, maybe they could have done, I'm talking the NCAA, but even teams could have said something in terms of what the NFL's doing now, which is, look, if we find out that you're putting yourself in a high-risk situation, like you'll be quarantined, obviously you won't get paid for those days, like you'll be fined, all this, there will be punishment. So maybe if they were in that situation, do you think that's something that could have been possible?
Can't do that.
Yeah, no, they can. But even if so, with that being there would be obviously be issues like we can do what we want, and all this too. I'm trying to think of ways that they can get around it other than telling them, please don't do this. But I don't know.
Well, because we're now hearing that a lot of those waivers are, I think NCAA even made it might have been Emmert made the comment that they may be bound by law with those waivers, but they don't know if these universities are actually going to be allowed to make sure that they can allow those to be permitted. I mean, that's the thing. And then I know, several weeks ago, I think some congressman was trying to get a bill passed to prevent universities from having those waivers. And that was something that you had floated around for a while.
Right.
But there's still the ethics of it.
Yeah.
These aren't employees.
Right. There always was. It was just something that I chalked it up to unprecedented times, call for these types of situations possibly. But, that's the thing. I mean, we also know that, hey, if these players don't want to play, they don't have to play. I mean, bottom line, they're still granted these scholarships and all that, too. Speaking of that, let's kind of shift this into the Pac-12 situation and dive into this here, because this is a pretty interesting thing going on in the Pac-12. First of all, the Pac-12 as a whole, it's been a mess for a long time, if I'm being completely honest. Like, Larry Scott, not really that great of commissioner. I've been thinking he's been overpaid for a long time, too, for the amount of work that he's done.
And, I mean, they have not been relevant in the major sports for 5-6 years.
Right, and they can't fill stands. I mean, even for football games, there's a lot that goes on in the Pac-12 where it's like, it's kind of an afterthought, which I understand. It should be. So all these players, are coming out. There's still not a full number. We know for sure there's like 12 or 13 that signed this list of demands, but apparently to them, they represent hundreds of players in the Pac-12, which I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what they say. Pac-12 put out this statement, open letter, with demands. Is literally what they're saying, that they want these met by the Pac-12, or they will threaten to not practice and not play with this upcoming season. When I first saw it was 12 or 13, and I thought maybe that's all they were taught. Like, those guys just try to get together and unionize. Yeah. Like, the Pac-12 could literally be like, okay, big deal, sue us. Like, we don't need to deal with that. But everything, when I started to read through it. So, first of all, the health and safety protections with COVID-19 and all that. Like, I get that, okay? If they go in there and they're not really knowing or even feel comfortable with what's in place, like, they should be able to feel comfortable and play football. Okay, so if there's something wrong and needs to be addressed, I get the whole health concerns. That should probably be something that should be met, right? I even understand what they're asking for with the insurance. They want insurance, right, to protect themselves for like 6 years after they play and all this. Like, that to me, I'm like, I understand it, fine, whatever. The thing that gets me when I immediately saw it was that they want 50% of all revenue from the conference among each sport to be divided up amongst their athletes in that sport. So when I saw that, thought to myself immediately, there's no way that's possible, okay? Because think about all the sports, right? And we all know how many sports make a ton of profit, bottom line. Basketball, men's basketball, and football are usually the only sport, and sometimes not even men's basketball.
Right.
Mainly football, but a lot of times men's basketball at some big schools will turn a profit and will actually make money. All other sports, men's and women's, for the most part, there's the occasional, I'm sure people would call up and be offended, like, oh, you forgot about this sport over here. Like, yeah, there's some sports that do probably turn a profit that aren't football and basketball occasionally, but by and large, it's mainly football and basketball. So when you talk about, so for instance, you're looking at all these sports in the Pac-12. If these players are saying what looks like they're saying here with these demands, this team over here, this swimming team or whatever, just throwing it out there, wants revenue put back to like 50% back to like what revenue though? You know, you'd be going, well, it would be debt, right? You'd be going in debt. So the 50% number, I'm like, that's not possible. To me, that's more of a negotiation tactic. Maybe they try to swing it to where the Pac-12 comes up with a different number. I still don't know how you're going to do that.
Well, from the negotiating aspect, I think it's more of a throw it out there. We know we're not going to get it, but by having it there, that we now have, you know, we can say, hey, we won because we got these things approved.
It's a starting point.
And one of the biggest ones to me was, and I thought that was a huge moment because from what I've heard, most of these are football players.
Yeah.
And some of them are from, Stanford, UCLA, USC. A lot of them complaining about why do we have to be on campus when our universities are not allowing on-campus teaching this upcoming semester. But the whole cut coaches' salaries and make sure that money goes towards the programs like your swimming and diving that might be in jeopardy and not cut those. That, I think, is huge because we don't see that very often. We don't hear that very often. But if you're around enough athletic programs, you understand that a lot of them have a healthy respect for their fellow athletes at their universities. I mean, you go there, and I've going back a couple years ago now. I think it was 2 years ago now. Late in after the wrestling season, there were wrestlers, including John Smith himself, but there were wrestlers and head coach who were out there supporting women's tennis, CY, and when they were making a run in the postseason. I mean, they have a respect for their fellow athletes outside of their sport. So that, to me, I think was huge, and hopefully doesn't get lost in everything else because they are understanding, hey, we just saw Stanford, prestigious Stanford cut, and again, they already had a large number.
Yeah.
But to prevent the possibility of them of athletic programs saying, you know what, to make sure we can get our head football coach paid his $5 million a year, we're gonna go out and cut. We're gonna go cut tennis.
Yeah, and see, the thing I see with that is, for instance, they're talking about Commissioner 2. Okay, Larry Scott probably makes too much money. I mean, and that's also based off what his performance has been since he's been the commissioner of the Pac-12. I think that's kind of where we get lost with where we pay some of these coaches and or commissioners, is a lot of times we don't base it off of their success or lack of, which is probably what it should be. So you get them on contract, they do this, they don't do that, probably should be let go at sometimes and they're not, that type of thing. But also when you talk about paying your coaches here, think about if they did say we're going to cut this back, okay, and they cut it back significantly like these players want, well, does that lead to the possibility of less talent at the head coaching position? I mean, if they get a guy that's a head coach and they say, we're not going to pay you $3 million, we're going to pay you $1 million salary a year.
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to do it. So eventually do they go down the line and like all of a sudden now you're searching for coaches all over the place because you don't pay them?
Yeah, no. And I mean, that's a fair argument because the fact of the matter is SEC is never going to get to that point. They're going to throw away money left and right to get, who they believe is the best coach. And because of that, and that's why, I think I asked you guys the question several weeks ago of could this pandemic lead to a restructuring of coaches' contracts? Because you know what, if there is no football season, you know what, there's money that you're still having to pay Nick Saban, $7 million, but he didn't perform anything. He didn't bring anything to the university. So do they start saying, okay, yeah, I think ultimately if there is a restructuring of coaches' salaries, it's going to have to probably start in the SEC, like with almost everything. because there's so much money that kind of under the table we can all agree upon, that they're the ones that are going to decide if we say, hey, you know what, there's only so much money we need to be giving to our head coaches,
right?
Because we need to make sure that money goes into our other programs in case something like this happens again.
See, and that's like, I get that argument, but at the same time, I don't know, like, kind of what these players are saying, how much money you put into those other sports. Are you really ever going to generate that any type of that back? I really don't think that's the case. That's kind of where you are now, too. So if you look at a guy also like Nick Saban, take any big head coach in college football, even Gundy, whatever, take all of them, but Saban mainly I'm thinking here because of the salary you just mentioned, but the success that he brings. Okay, I know that he doesn't physically do anything on the field that win, but him being a head coach and all that comes with it, the work that he does, not only that, but think about the recruits that have come to Alabama because that's his name, right? And the same thing for Mike Gundy, I'm sure at OSU in the past, like, has been a lot of guys say, I want to go play for Mike Gundy. So that's all over. So I think the ability to have a coach with a reputation and a name and a guy that has won plenty of games before does help, and they should be compensated very well. But that's also what we get. Think about it here in a capitalistic society where you are able to make as much money as possible. And if that's the case right here, I don't see that changing anytime soon either.
That's part of the problem is, not only are you paying those, but you're paying guys who have proven to succeed where they're at, you know, a Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, stuff like that. But you're also paying a lot more money for head coaches that, you know, like Missouri, just spent a whole bunch to bring in a new head coach, but you don't know if he's actually going to perform. But because the reason I side with the athletes in this, let's go to Arizona, for example. They have baseball and softball are hands down better than their basketball and football programs. But you know, if there's a money shortage, they're the first two programs to get cut before football and basketball. And that's wrong. That straight up, and I'm not saying that's happening everywhere, and I'm not saying that should happen everywhere, but that's the crazy thing. If we're putting all of our money in football, even if it's not a great product, we're then sacrificing the good talent on a university or across an entire conference.
Right, but again, that goes to football and basketball definitely at Arizona, generating, like you said, like generating the most money, and that's simply from,
even if they're bad.
Yeah, I know. If the product is even, you know, mediocre or bad, I mean, look at all the teams every single year that never have a shot at making the college football playoff that consistently sell out their stadiums.
But that's the funny thing with the fan base, though, is, you know, they'll spend their money on that, even if it's a team that's not going to make it to a bowl game. But the moment Arizona baseball makes it to the College World Series, everyone wants that T-shirt. Everyone wants on that bandwagon. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah,
I think that's the funny thing about college athletics and college fan bases is they jump on the bandwagon even though they don't support a program. You know, whether it be going to a game, following a game, anything, the moment there's success, they want to have that T-shirt just to say, yeah, you know, my university's great. And it's like, have you even been to a game?
Right, and that's just what comes with it with football and basketball. I mean, since the beginning of time, right, in college sports, it's been what attracts people. And I just don't see that changing in a huge way, you know, and that's one of those that's just how it is type things. I don't know exactly how you're trying to change it or why it should change, because if it generates money in a capitalistic society, then that's what's going to be the forefront, and I completely get it.
May not generate money this year.
It may,
that's why I'm arguing the possibly paying less for coaches, because then you don't find yourself in a situation where you're desperate, you know, where, you know, such a large percentage of your budget for a university, for an athletic department, is solely in coaches' salaries.
But think about this too, right? If it weren't for football or basketball, would we even have the chance for most of these other sports? Probably not. I mean, think about it. With the money that is made from football and basketball helps pay the scholarships for athletes of other sports.
Yeah. Well, if again money were allocated properly from universities and NCAA, maybe you wouldn't have to worry about relying on one or two money sports.
Right, well, we haven't we've been down that rabbit hole a bunch of times. So it's really an interesting proposal with all these.
Did I read right? SEC players are also.
I haven't seen that.
I read somewhere where it said big Pac-12 and SEC players have made demands.
I haven't seen anything about SEC. We'll have to verify that. Just know for sure Pac-12 did it over the weekend. Pretty much everything there was hit on in terms of the big points was the 50% revenue split, which is obviously we know not going to happen. Everything else, though, like I said, I kind of get. Part of it was...
Yeah, the headline per report, SEC football players have expressed concern about playing amid the pandemic.
Okay, so...
I don't know if they've made proclamations like the Pac-12.
It's probably not like a list of demands like this, but
the health issue with the pandemic apparently has been addressed with SEC. And again, like I said, that's where the movers and shakers are going to be.
Yeah, and I get the whole you want to be safe and healthy playing college football this year with what's going on. But is there really, for so many of these guys, the things that are protocols that are put in place, the measures that are being taken at these schools, are they really like that bad to where, I mean, maybe they are, I don't know, but are they really that bad to where, it's like we need this to be done, or we're not going to play? I don't know if that's the case. It kind of seems unlikely, but maybe it is. But I get it. If that's part of it, you want to make sure you're as healthy as you can be and as safe as you can be during this time.
And the interesting thing is you keep seeing things, and I thought it this morning, if I'm an OSU athlete and I just found out that the walk-around has been canceled, the pumping and everything for homecoming has been canceled, it's like, okay, if it's not safe for those people, why is it safe for me to play?
Yeah, so we haven't even said that. I was going to put that in there officially. Homecoming activities all been canceled and moved to 2020.
Not football related.
Right.
All the stuff from the Alumni Association, walk around, homecoming and hoops,
which is a huge deal, right? I mean, I've never experienced it. It's nationwide, known.
They typically say they can get upwards of 100 or 100,000 people showing up in Stillwater just for the walk around that Friday night.
See, if you're a player though, like that's like you have to get that right. Like where they're not going to do 100,000 people. Like you understand that point, right? I mean,
well, and that's the thing is while we're talking about that real quick, I think it obviously that's a main focus, but also we have to keep in mind the build up to it is typically 70 hours a week between middle of August till homecoming week. Your fraternities and sororities are pumping until 2 or 3 in the morning. You got people in the basements of these fraternity houses and sorority houses that are creating these things. It's going to be hard to do social distancing there as well. So I think there's just multiple layers to it that it makes sense. But then it begs the question: how can we have fans in the stands? How can we say it's all right for you guys to go out and as athletes and go up against people from a different town, a different state, if we're not even allowing our fans in?
Yeah, see, with the fans thing, I think we're learning that it's going to be possible, but you're going to have
depending on state.
Yeah, depending on state, and you're
because Ohio announced today that high school, college, and pros for the foreseeable future
no go. It's going to depend on that, but we have seen, at least for instance in Tennessee with the races and other places occasionally, that social distancing is definitely possible in these big stadiums. So, but again, it's all going to depend on yes or no from your state. When we come back, TCU has been the talk of the summer in many different ways. Well, this one isn't so great. We'll talk about that next.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time.
It's the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist wrapping up hour number 1. So TCU back in the news. We talk about Oklahoma State having a tough time with the news this offseason with everything going on. Yeah, that's been the case. TCU really has had their share as well, and it continues today with linebacker Dylan Jordan comes on. I won't read the whole post, pretty lengthy, but I'll give you the gist of it. Comes on Twitter and says, head coach Gary Patterson came up to him and said, "Hey, stop saying the N-word." He said, basically, "I've heard you say the N-word in the locker room when all this." But he actually, so here's how you got to understand it. When Patterson told this to Jordan, he didn't say, "Hey, stop saying the N-word." He said, "Stop saying," and actually said the N-word, according to Dylan Jordan. He went on later to say that also that led to them, a group of players, I don't think it's the whole team here, but a group of players saying they refused to practice this morning with TCU with Gary Patterson because of that. He also said that he came into the locker room, Coach Patterson did, and said, quote, "I wasn't calling him a N-word," and said the actual word, unquote there. So from what I'm getting from this is, first of all, they're allegations, okay? We don't know if this is true or untrue. We haven't had any confirmation from anything here. But according to Dylan Jordan, he didn't actually come in and call anybody the N-word. He simply said, "I heard you saying it," but continue to say the word. So Dylan Jordan posts this on Twitter. The tight end on the team comes on and says, I can't even find this guy's name from his Twitter account. It says Tay Mike, whatever his name is there. Comes on and says, "Hey, look, the man said stop saying N-word in the meetings. He said, you've been saying the N-word in meetings. He never said you N-word." So he said this shouldn't be used in any form or fashion, obviously that word, but Dylan is wrong for making it seem that way. This stuff is soft of you, son, is what he said on Twitter. So that's kind of my issue with it here, okay? Because also if you go on Twitter there, you look at the thread, it's immediate people jumping to the side of, oh my gosh, we got to fire Gary Patterson. He should be let's slow down here. Let's slow down and wait for things to come out. My problem with everybody with these types of things, okay, it's not just this, but anybody alleging something that was said or whatever against somebody else. We have people that want to immediately jump to a side when we need more of, let's wait for a minute. Let's see what all comes out of this. Let's give everybody a chance to speak their piece, especially with something like this when you've got one guy saying
that's never going to change.
No, but it used to be like that, right? At some part
before social media, yes.
Sure. Okay. So social media, but my problem with it too is when you look at this thread, you go down, you see all these white check marks of people that are a lot of them are sports writers. They're like, fire Gary Patterson. It's like, chill for a second. Let's find out. When the tight end on the team is saying that this isn't how it happened, this is actually how it happened. What I'm getting from this is, and bottom line for me, if Gary Patterson did come in and say, "Hey, stop saying the N-word," but he actually said the N-word when he said it, he needs to obviously be smart enough in this time and climate to never actually use that word.
And that's what I get from the tight end is the fact that he said it. He said it in a form.
Right, but it wasn't calling anybody it, right?
Right. But again, contextually, you have to understand the moment and who, again, the who you're surrounded by. Most athletes in college football are black. And so, and especially in the current climate, kind of like what you said about Gundy needing to understand what he's saying before he says it. That's what I read with this.
Yeah,
maybe he didn't say he wasn't directing at somebody, but this tight end essentially made it sound like he said it, but he didn't say it at you. It's but does that make it any better though? That's my thing. Does just because he said it in a different context doesn't necessarily make it any better that you have a 60-year-old head coach using that word around a bunch of 18, 19-year-old black kids?
Right. No, I don't want to. It's just like the tight end said there, that there's never a good context to use the word. And so I 100% agree with that.
Right.
At the same time, Gary Patterson, it's one of those, again, I can't tell you how many times since I've had this job that I've come on here and told you, why in the world am I having to literally go back in time here and have to basically say what this person should have said? It's not that hard. You avoid things, and then, in this climate, you just do. And if you're Gary Patterson, you don't ever say that word. I mean, you just don't. No one should, but you don't say that word. You don't put it in that context. So I understand how that could maybe come off as dude, you just said that word. You can't say that word. But at the same time, I just don't want this whole, oh my gosh, we got to fire him because he said the word. Like, he was putting it into context. I'm trying to back any. I'm just trying to say we need to get everything into facts here and context and make sure we understand what really went on. Look, the tight end that backed him up is black too. I mean, this would, to me, if he actually did go in there and say and call one of them that word, right? Everybody probably on the team is going to jump and say,
right,
we got to get this dude out of here. He can't be saying that, whatever. When he has a stupid moment like this where he actually says the word, okay, you can't, I don't know, because look, think about it too. Older guys, right? It's still today and in head coaching positions and all this, like, they still, for some reason, don't understand that not only is there things you don't say anymore in a public setting, nonetheless, but think about all the ways that what you say can be set in stone forever. We live in a technological age where anybody can record anything at any time, and it's not that hard to do. So I really don't get why we have this like continuing issue with people like thinking, just say this one time won't be no big deal. Like, dude, it's gonna be a big deal. And let me say this: players right now in this climate and situation are more than ever feel like they can come out and say whatever about a coach or this or that or whatever. Some of it rightfully so. I mean, if there's a real allegation, I would 100% get it out there. But right now, what this is, if it ends up being true, that he ended up saying it in that context, wasn't calling anybody, and TCU's locker room is now blown up over this, because you've got one player saying that this didn't happen, another player saying this happened, it's like, the season's about to start. I mean, hopefully, like, it's like, come on.
Here's the fascinating thing, though. The two coaches embroiled in the most out of the Big 12 right now, obviously during this whole pandemic with foot and mouth disease, is Gundy and Patterson. You know who the two oldest and most tenured coaches are in the Big 12?
Yeah.
Mike Gundy and Coach Patterson.
Right.
And again, I'm not pushing for we need a replacement, but maybe, because we've heard back before you were here, Gundy calling, kids these days, a lot of them are snowflakes, stuff like that. You also have to understand that, and Tom's tried to at times to acknowledge the fact that the younger generation is a generation that has come up differently than him, than Patterson, than Gundy, even from you and I. They view the world differently. And I think that's why these younger coaches, you're starting to see some of them have success because they can relate a little bit more, and why you see so many older coaches starting to have some cracks because they're not adjusting as well to the quote-unquote snowflake generation.
Right, and I don't necessarily believe that all these coaches just have to, cater to every single person's what they want, but is it becoming more of an adapt or die situation?
Okay. Are coaches not praised for making in-game adjustments?
Yeah.
Are they not?
Right. No, and you're right.
So how can they not make in-person adjustments?
Yeah, you have to be able to adjust. There's a fine line of not giving up, though, how you coach when it's led to success and adjusting.
Right, but but at the same time, you have to adjust to your players. You have to.
If you want continued success with your career, yes.
Exactly.
I will say this also real quick.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go back to being a 6 and 7 win season like TCU and OSU has been the last 2 years, then by all means, take the same course.
I'll say this too. There are, I don't know if I'd say the word snowflake, but are there a lot of players that, for instance, like you and me, when we played back in the day, I'm sure, and back in the day, but you know what I mean. When we played, right?
Back in my day.
Yeah, when we played, it was probably still, at least for me, I'm sure it was for you, a lot of times coaches were like, if they thought you weren't doing something right, like they call you out, right? And it maybe on paper it seems a little harsh. I never once really thought, oh my gosh, that was rude and uncalled for. Like, if I was getting called out, usually wasn't doing what I was supposed to, right? So, but today, it seems like there are more of those people, those athletes, where it's like they can't take criticism.
And I'll say this: it's not just athletes.
Sure.
That's the thing that the older generations need to understand right now. It's not just athletes. My wife is a teacher up at OSU, and she will get inundated from the parents of current college-age kids saying, why are you guys doing this? What's the grade? Blah, blah, blah. When they're adults, legally, my wife or any other professor cannot reply to those.
Right.
But that was never a case. When I was in college, I never complained to my parents about, my teacher doesn't like me.
That trickles down. It starts at a younger age because now it's not, let's go and talk to the principal, whatever, why my kid messed up. It's, why did you allow my kid to mess up? It's like, that's not the way to go.
Which, then we need to realize, while Gundy calls them snowflakes, maybe it's the parents and the upbringing that are allowing such an approach as well. That's the thing. We always want to attack the kids. Like, hey,
I agree.
They were raised this way.
Look, they make their own decisions, but don't tell me the influence of how they were raised doesn't play a ton into this. I mean, for instance, I'm watching the new season of Last Chance U is out. Watching it, and if you ever watch Last Chance U, like they're at the community colleges, right? And these coaches, like, they don't care. Like, F-bombs are flying, like, do this, do that, if you're dumb, if you don't, like, and you know what? Sorry, but it's worked. I mean, there's so many times where it's like, people, too, you go back, talk to anybody in the past that's played football before, and it's like, hey, you know what? His harsh criticism made me a better man today, but that's not the case anymore. So I get there has to be an adjustment period, but it's definitely, I'll say this, I don't think I could coach right now in today's climate. When we come back, I'm going to tell Jason and everybody else listening why my sports world has completely crumbled around me this past weekend. That's next.
I don't wanna wait for our life to be over. You have it, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane out of Southern California.
It's hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist with you here on Monday. I watched a lot of Major League Baseball since its comeback, Jason. I really have tried to dive into that as much as possible because I've missed Major League Baseball about as much as anything here. And this weekend, with everything going on, sports-wise, it was good to have even more options, which, I mean, honestly, I said this a long time ago, August was going to be the craziest sports month, at least filled with pro sports, than we probably ever had. Football would probably be getting close to starting up, especially on the college level, so it's like all that put in together. You mentioned that the last thing you kind of saw was the whole Marlins situation, right? And that one was bad, okay? It started off like the number just kept going up. As of like yesterday, like kept going up. Okay?
Well, and the stupidity of it is the fact that MLB went ahead and allowed them to play that game when they knew that there was possibility of some testing of positive tests.
See, there was so much
and that's a ripple effect.
Yeah, and Don Mattingly sends out a text to his guys, and he said basically we knew 3 for sure, and we asked everybody, do you still want to play? So I made the argument again that it all starts from the top. That bad organizations are run very bad, right? Like look at the Mets. Yeah, look at the Mets. Look at the Cleveland Browns was one of my favorite examples because even on paper,
the Washington football team.
Yeah, exactly. But the Browns on paper, like they should be really talented, right? But their leadership from top to bottom has always found a way, I mean, all the way through, and even their players, part of it, to mess things up somehow. Okay, so this right here to me immediately fell on the weight of the Marlins organization, not just the players, because everybody was told the same guidelines by Major League Baseball. Don't do this, don't do that, adhere to this, adhere to that. And everybody else seemed to be taking it serious at that time, except the Marlins, and it was like, dude, the Marlins just put the entire season in jeopardy because of a couple selfish people, right? And I literally thought to myself as I'm watching this whole Marlins situation play out, and at that time St. Louis was still getting to play, and I thought to myself, wow, would suck to be a Marlins fan. Glad that hasn't happened to St. Louis because my team knows how to act and everything like that. And it just got thrown back in my face because now St. Louis is like number 2 up here to kind of ruin things, okay? We even went as far as last Friday, sitting here doing the show, get an update from Rob Manfred, because at that time it's still kind of snowballing with the Cardinals news and everything. Getting an update from Rob Manfred that says, threatening the players and said, look, I will shut down the season if players don't start taking it serious, okay? We later get a report this weekend that he says, I'm not a quitter, we're still going to play, but players got to take it more serious. It doesn't help now when St. Louis lost the series to the Milwaukee Brewers because they had a few positives. I kind of went off on it Friday talking about, I wonder what the testing protocols are on this. I went into detail kind of how if we're not getting them, because they're turning around in like 24 hours or less on these results. So if you do it to me, I don't know if it's being done this way, but it should. Testing should be done first thing in the morning. You get it done first thing in the morning, flip it over 24 hours at the latest, you get it the next morning before a game starts. It just so happened that St. Louis played at noon that day. So I thought to myself, they got the results late that night for whatever reason, the night before. That prompted them to have to cancel the game because it took place at noon the next day. Didn't have time to turn it around and get everything going. So that one made sense. Then they ultimately postponed the series. And I'm thinking to myself, because they were still waiting on tests and all this, but it's like, here we go again. Now we're starting to set this precedent of all of a sudden we're going to have to start canceling series based on a couple positive tests. Well, now you get more testing done. The results finally come in again. 7 St. Louis Cardinals players and 6 staff tested positive. So you've got 13 total on the St. Louis Cardinals right now. They had a 4-game slate set up this week against the Tigers. That's already been wiped out. Okay, 4 games, again, has already been wiped out. It brings me back to this point as well, because now the report is a group, they won't say how many, but multiple Cardinals players went to the casino during all this. Look, the casino, out of all things, during the coronavirus,
It's still not as hilarious as I read yesterday, Lou Williams, though.
Okay.
At least they didn't go to the Magic City Strip Club.
I had a really...
when he was out of the bubble for a funeral.
I had a really good segment on that, too, because it's also come out since then that, he talked about, I just went there for the wings. Well, the actual stripper that gave him the dance came out and said, no, he tipped me very well for my services. And I'm like, oh, my God, this game got better and better. Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll get into that at some point. It's nuts. This is maybe.
And again, these are quote adults with a lot of money,
right?
Who can't just say, I don't need to go to the casino tonight.
That's the thing.
How we
is
expect college kids to say, I don't need to go to the bar tonight after practice.
See, that's the thing is that I said whenever Major League Baseball players said we're not going to do the bubble. We have family members at home we want to see. Like when you and I kind of went off, like what you don't see them that often anyways. Like we didn't really buy the whole, and we knew, like as we're proving right now, that wasn't the real reason for everybody. Okay, they wanted the freedom to do all this stuff. But yeah, there's a part of me where it's like, I didn't think when they said no bubble that athletes who were making this much money would risk losing some of this money. Like and with everything that went on in the off season back and forth, remember Major League Baseball.
Not followed this country since March? If you thought 100% of football, basketball, baseball, college athletes would say, for the love of the game, I'll sit at home and do nothing.
You know what?
You are vastly overrating this country.
I've been duped too many times to think that's the case anymore. Never really bought into it, but like I said, a part of it was because of how bitter it was back and forth. That they finally got something done, and I thought to myself, you know what? Maybe that would actually get players to serious up here. They're kind of given a unique opportunity, not sticking in a bubble, and they're not going to risk it. But my thing also with it is, I told Tom this the other day, I hate being the guy to come on and be like, don't go live your life, Don't go do what you want to do. Because I want people to be able to do that. Even during this time. But if things allow you to do it, go do it if you want. But when you're a pro athlete with all this responsibility literally hinged on the entire season, and a guy like Rob Manfred, okay, who is, in my opinion, an extremely unstable person, an extremely unstable commissioner, could pull the plug at any minute, I'm like, this is all just a really, really bad mix. But it kind of hurts even worse because it just happened to be the team that I root for. Look, the Cardinals, as you well know, the long-time history has been, the Cardinal way. We do things the right way in St. Louis. That's why we're such a successful organization. They're kind of like the antithesis of the Miami Marlins. But this is a really, really bad look, okay? If you have 7 players, and the word from the top was we had a couple of them that tested positive, that definitely spread it amongst others. If it was 2 guys that went to the casino, I don't know what else it's going to take other than me personally begging these guys to just, for a small, think about it, a small portion of their lives, come out of their comfort zones and do what it takes to play baseball. And just for the fan aspect. Like, is that asking too much here? Am I asking too much of professional athletes to play baseball, go to the hotel, and come back and play baseball again? Is that too much?
Again, in this country, yes. Because we're asking some people to just wear a mask when they go to Walmart, and they can't even handle that.
Yeah, it's just, and then this level of selfishness, too. That's what it is. It's selfish, okay? These guys that went to the casinos were selfish. Tom came up and he said, you know what? You ripped the Marlins players. You better do the same thing for the Cardinals. And I already said it last week that I would do that if it was found out that they were out there breaking protocol. I wanted to say there's no way they did because they take this too serious. They weren't out there breaking protocol. But it's almost like, what other explanation is it? I know you could take every precaution in the world and still possibly get the coronavirus. I get that. But your chances go way down if you're taking all the precautions in the world like Major League Baseball is asking. So, bottom line, with all this happening with the Marlins and the Cardinals, revisions have been made. Every team now has a compliance officer, by the way. How'd you like to be that guy? And then on top of that, you also have, originally it was discouraged for players to leave the hotel. Now it's prohibited, okay? Major League Baseball has been forced to do this. Like, players have forced their hand.
Yep.
There's a lot of times where I'll come on here and I'll talk about how stupid of a person Rob Manfred is, because he really is. Doesn't have a lot of brains going on over there with the decisions he makes. But in this spot, has there been a commissioner put in a tougher position right now?
Right.
I mean, seriously, this is driving me nuts. And I thought, too, after what people saw with the Marlins, like that's a great coaching point right there, to not do that stuff.
Yeah, now, this begs the question that I've seen, should the NFL, looking at MLB and NBA, consider the NBA approach of doing a bubble system?
The thing is, so we know with how many more players are in the NFL that a centralized one-place bubble is probably not possible, like Orlando. Could you do a bunch of individual ones and even technically call them moving bubbles? I think that's certainly possible, where you could do, like, you guys stay in this hotel only. When you travel, it's this place only. And I mean, there has to be, the thing that the NFL's done, which maybe will curb some of this already, is they've put the precautions in place. They put the rules in place that say, if you get the coronavirus as a player and we can prove that you were in a high-risk situation, like I said earlier, you lose out on that money, you get fined, there's punishments for it. That's what Major League Baseball probably should have done. Maybe it would have stopped some of these guys. I don't know. Probably not everybody. But I think that's step one with the NFL. I just don't see how you can, like, even Fauci had said it at one point, only way we can play football is if we bubble it. You can't bubble in one spot for the NFL. Yeah. Do you think, though, maybe if, like I'm saying, to hold these individual ones or just a bunch of different
regional bubbles?
Yeah, regional across the area.
Because, as much as people may hate it, honestly, a place like Arlington, I think might be good, because obviously you have AT&T Stadium, but I bet you could even try to ask the new baseball stadium if it can configure to because then you can essentially have two football fields in literally close proximity to each other. And then, you could even, you might be even able to use the old baseball stadium, because that was where the Renegades were supposed to be playing for XFL.
Right.
So, I mean, technically, that's 3 football fields if you can work it properly right there in the same complex.
Yeah.
So, if you could find something like that, maybe you can do, I'm still saying they should have done my approach that I said back in April, of buy up land in Montana, build several football fields. You're not gonna have fans. You're not gonna have, but then you're not under control of any municipality saying, we can't have it. Blah, blah. Like, you own that land. You own that territory. You have the games there. That's what it feels like they should be doing at this point now, because of what the MLB athletes have done.
Right, and the NFL has had so much time. Okay, really they have. They've been gifted the gift of time with all of this. So if something isn't put in place to try to curb a lot of this, there's really no excuse.
Right.
So you got to come up with some sort of, we're seeing right now, and look, I'll admit it, I didn't think the NBA bubble was going to necessarily work. I thought there would be a puncture at some point, but they've handled it really well.
You had two attempts at it. They squashed it.
And they squashed it.
Yeah.
They did a really good job of it. They can do it obviously with less players and in one centralized area. But to see what Major League Baseball is doing, if you're the NFL, I don't think you can just go like a normal season, because there would be too many people. Look, I'm just saying that, like, NFL players love the clubs too.
Yep.
Like, they're professional athletes, okay? They're going to do this if there are not restrictions in place. And even with, like I said, that they're going to penalize these guys that they can prove, and what they consider a high-risk situation is 15 or more people in one spot. If they can prove that's the case, players miss a couple of games, and there's some players, look, to be honest, name some off the top of my head, that would be like, I don't really care. Honestly, think about it. So there's got to be something done before this all starts, because guess what? We're hitting August. We are a little over a month away from the NFL kicking off, for crying out loud.
Well, and here's the danger, though, the NFL is having to face, because, like you said, you've got more people per team, and it's not like, you go outside of the top 22 that all those other guys are necessarily maybe going to care. It's like, hey, I'm the special teams flunky. I'm literally number 60 on the roster. Yeah, I'm going to go out to casino tonight. Well, he gets it and then spreads it to Patrick Mahomes unknowingly. And then suddenly it's like, okay, well, there goes the face of the NFL. Like, that's a reality that the NFL could face, but based on, and I think seeing MLB having that issue, because essentially NFL is kind of trying to take a similar model of we're still going to have it in our stadiums. Everyone's going to fly here and there.
Right.
I think it has to draw caution now for NFL of we have to take some approach of mandating that these guys aren't if somehow find a way that your 23 through 60 are abiding by these rules, because no one's going to pay attention if it's if it's not Patrick Mahomes or Ty Matthew or Tom Brady out of the clubs,
right?
But that could ultimately impact, because if it would, because in reality the 13 for the Cardinals, how many of them actually were ones that went out?
Right,
how much
that's
of it
what
was
I'm thinking.
Contact tracing?
Because it seems like that there were maybe 2 at the most that went out, maybe more. But the spread is definitely something that took place to some of these guys that were probably innocent in all this. So maybe what you do is the NFL, and you have to kind of get this out now. You want to make this as early as possible so players know, first of all, they have the option to opt out. This would probably do it a little bit more extreme. But to say something like, look, if you want to play in the NFL this year, you are going to be mandated to, once the season starts, it's literally game, hotel, same hotel, game, hotel. You will not be allowed out of this. If you don't want to do it, opt out now.
And that's the interesting thing, because I don't know if you saw over the weekend, James Washington, former Oklahoma State wide receiver for Pittsburgh, was put on the COVID list. And that's the thing is, like, we don't know. He doesn't seem like, from his time here, didn't seem like a guy who, he was going out to the club or went to the casino and that's where he got it. For all we know, he could have, gone to gas up on his way to training camp and just happened to interact with someone there who had it and got it there. That's what's hard with the current situation that MLB and NFL have, without having a bubble like the NBA, that you don't know if it's just he went through the drive-through at local restaurant, and the person giving him his food just happened to cough and he had it.
That's why I'm saying literally the only thing I can think of is doing what I just said and telling your guys, look, we're going to enforce it heavily and make it to where even when you're at your home field, you don't get to go home, you get to go to the hotel and back, and you're not going to be allowed out. Would that force some people to opt out of the season? Sure, but I think that's something you take.
And I'm assuming that's something that would have to be constructed into the CBA, because at that point you're saying, hey, you don't have the rights of a normal citizen.
Right, exactly.
You have to be cooped up in a hotel for the next 6 months.
Would the players ever agree to that? I wish I could be like, I want them to say yes so they can for sure play, but I don't know if they ever would. I don't think they seemed pretty. I think that idea was sort of floated around in different terms, and they all didn't really seem too keen about it. But at the same time, you have to think about this. If you're Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, for any quarterback, right, that's really important to your team, I'm doing my best. So when I know that, again, you don't know for sure, but pretty much everybody's you're getting tested every single day, right? So you're probably safest amongst your facilities. But if I'm Patrick Mahomes, I'm taking it upon myself to like make it a quarantine season for me, right?
Right.
Those guys can't be missing games.
Right, but at the same time, we don't know, is Baker Mayfield going to be willing to do that?
Exactly. Not everybody will, I don't think.
If every team that faces the Browns then suddenly comes and so there's the ripple effect there that you have to be careful. For the NFL, if, let's say in 2 weeks' notice, 2 weeks' time, MLB has to shut down because another two teams have come down with this. But the NBA is still in the height of the playoff seeding and they're going playoff run. Does the NFL then at that point, do you think, have to look at the two models that were presented to them and say the model that we're kind of gearing towards is not working and has had to shut down after 3 to 4 weeks of play, where this bubble system is working?
Yeah.
Do they consider shifting it, 2 or 3 weeks out before the season starts?
Yeah, if it became as drastic as Major League Baseball had to shut down completely, I think that definitely prompts the conversation, and players have to be a little open to this too, because they are also seeing what happens when they're not. Like Major League Baseball players were not open to the idea of let's play in Florida and Arizona.
Right.
I wonder what they're thinking now, right? Maybe we should have done that and actually should have gone a little bit of time away from our families. And if we really didn't want to, we could have just not played. Like that's going to be the case with the NFL looking at it right now. They're like telling their Players Association, look, we want to give you guys the freedom to go be able to do what you want to do and be able to play football. But look what's happening. Like Major League Baseball has already, we're not talking like they were almost done with the abbreviated season. They just started, and they can't get a few weeks in without two teams having to stop playing. And the number of games that have been missed, it's like almost 40 games that have been missed completely so far.
And again, keep in mind that it wasn't just two teams that had to shut down.
Right.
It was because they played the Phillies had to shut down.
Right. That's what that's what I'm saying with all the games. It's like all these teams that are affected by it.
Yeah.
Because now the
ripple
Tigers,
effect,
now for instance, the Tigers this week, what are they going to do? Are they going to find an opponent, or are they just not going to get to play this entire week? Like, it's not fair to everybody else. Yeah. And with as many players that are in Major League Baseball and in the National Football League, you have to assume, with just by the sure odds of it, that there's going to be somebody that doesn't follow protocol if there's not strictly enforced in place, which I wish I could find a way around it, but that's what the season's going to hinge on, unfortunately. So we'll see. I don't want NFL interrupted at all. That's the one thing come on, we can't do this. And they've had plenty of time. When we come back, one Major League Baseball player completely disappeared from his team. That's next.
She like my futuristic sound in the new spaceship. Futuristic if a Philip Kate. She never need a man, she what a man need. So I keep on falling for her daily. We was at Coachella going crazy. Stack a couple M's like I was shady. Now I'm in Tribeca like I'm Jay-Z. Rockin' Sora, I'm a
Oh man, my problems with Major League Baseball just keep adding and adding and adding up. Okay, so that was issue number one, why my sports world was crumbling around me, what I just talked about with the Cardinals. Also just got the update that the Hall of Fame, or the Field of Dreams game between them and the White Sox has officially been canceled as well, but they're not citing coronavirus for that reason. They're just saying it's canceled. So that's obviously not going to happen now, too. So, yeah, it just keeps getting even better. Let me give you the other reason real quick is Patrick Wheeler and Jason Lundquist here with the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. The other reason why I'm kind of lost out here on kind of not giving up hope, but it's just like, wow, here we go again. When it rains, it pours in sports. I'm thrilled to death that sports came back as they did. They came flying back in crazy fashion. A ton of good stuff coming out of sports. But so my team with the Cardinals obviously can't even play right now. Last night, the Blues get their first action in hockey, and I see something I've never seen in a hockey game in my entire life, and that is a team being beat at the buzzer in a hockey game. Never seen that before, ever. I'm talking, you saw it, 0.1 seconds left on the clock. They reviewed this thing for like 10 minutes. The puck is like sitting on the back edge of the line, just barely. There's a blur, and they said it was a goal. I've never seen anything like that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, St. Louis right now. They got to be going through it with everything. They just got everything back, and it's like that just happened. So that was pretty tough. I don't know how much hockey you watch, but ever seen anything like that, like a buzzer beater in hockey before?
Not like that.
That was buzzer, basketball buzzer beater.
Right. No, you don't see that often.
No.
Yeah, I mean, because it's so difficult, because it's not like in MLB or in football where like you can play out the play.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's you know, or even even in soccer, like even if you have extra time at the end, they play out the current possession until before the whistle blows. Like this is like basketball buzzer beater.
Yeah.
And you don't see that often in NHL.
No, and it was 0.1 seconds. They literally just walked off the ice. I've never seen anything like it. It was great to watch. Fantastic hockey game. I was thrilled to watch and have hockey back, but it was like...
I think the best reply or the best response to that I saw was, man, that conference championship series is going to be amazing.
It really is. The Western Conference, and they're doing the round robin right now where the top 4 teams are playing each other to get seeding for everybody else.
Speculation is it's going to be Avs versus Blues.
Yeah, and
based on how everyone's played.
If that was the prelude, get ready because... And look, I got to say this. I mean, even with no fans... I think hockey too. When I say football is probably most effective with crowd noise and everything. I think hockey's probably right up there. I mean, especially playoff hockey. And
I watched that shot, and that is the first thing that came to my mind was it's really weird not seeing people slapping their hands against the plexiglass.
Right, and
that was just weird to me.
It was, and Colorado was the home team, so had it been a real game and the regular fans and everything is what I'm saying. When they announced that it was good, the place would have erupted. I mean, it was all that. There was some strange moments, like you said, nobody pounded on the glass. But I did see, too, when hockey officially started on Saturday, there was, I think it was the Bruins maybe, like their first game in, it was like 2 minutes into the game, there was a fight, like on media. It was great. It was like, hockey's back,
Yeah.
So, but no fans. Yeah, it was strange, but it was a good production. They did a really good job of it overall. Okay, as I said before the break, one player decided just to disappear this weekend, by the way, in Major League Baseball. I get an update that the Mets' Yoenis Cespedes is just, they say that they can't find him. That was the update I got. They can't locate Yoenis Cespedes. And immediately, sorry, but my first thought was, oh my gosh, I feared the worst, really did. Like when I see that headline, because that's what happens with these situations. Like, what the heck happened to, was he taken for ransom? But I mean, what in the world could have possibly gone down to where they can't locate one of their star players? And turns out he just decided to opt out and quit and not play this season, and he didn't tell anybody. He didn't send a text, didn't send a phone call, didn't let anybody know. He just left. Their hotel room was empty. Security couldn't find him. He was just gone. Apparently, he went to the mall and was just I read the story. The story is wild, and he's just gone. So it begged the question, it made me think. First of all, if I'll ask you, has there ever been a time in your life where you quit a job and didn't tell the employers? Did you just leave and not show up and they just knew that you were done?
Not that I can think of.
I thought about it too, and there's there's one time I know I did it in freshman year of college. I had a job, and I know that it's honestly been a while now, and I just can't think back even the reason why I left, but just left. I was mad or whatever, and just didn't say anything, and it was a nothing job. But I thought to myself, now I'm thinking back, that was definitely the wrong way to handle it, because I look at Yoenis Cespedes here, obviously a different level, but it's the level of unprofessionalism there to not even tell you. There's an ability for Major League Baseball players to opt out if they want. That's there. It would have been strange, yes, for you to have started the season like he did and just probably decide to opt out. Your employer probably been what are we doing wrong? Is there something we can fix? Whatever. They don't want to lose Yoenis Cespedes. But him just leaving, it's what this guy's character is was there stuff rubbing wrong way with him in the Mets?
I thought about it coming into this into Stillwater Day, and I realized the thing we're all missing here with Cespedes, he is this generation's Manny Ramirez.
yeah, it's a fair comparison.
That's what he is, because it was the whole Manny being Manny. Uh-huh. Cespedes being Cespedes, of any pro sport,
yeah,
but in particular MLB, if there were one athlete that you said, hey, did you hear about this? He is the first guy I would think of.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair way to put it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the things they do pretty similar, and just the lifestyle and all that. Yeah, and the way they act. So, but I don't need people like what Tom said to like tell me that he wasn't a big part of this team. Okay, because he was like, and that
he was supposed to be, but his 15 strikeouts, 0 for 15 or 0 for 30 or whatever he was. Yeah,
his WAR's not good. It's really not. But I guess what I'm thinking of here, too, is the potential he has at any time to just get as hot as any player, if not the hottest player in Major League Baseball, is still there. And I think he was a big part of the Mets when they did succeed at some points. Now, he wasn't just like going to win you or lose your game all the time, so I get that. But just the way that he did it, I mean, don't think I've ever heard of anything like that, especially right now, like a player just like, that's like, don't you think, like if you're the Mets, right? You go in there, send your security in there, or whatever. They knock on the door, like nobody's answering. They can't get a hold of Cespedes. They're like, "What? What's your first response? Like, are you like legitimately in this climate, this time we're in? Like, you're worried, right? Like, where the heck?"
No, because my thought was just Cespedes being Cespedes.
so you
like
think,
I was when I first heard that they can't find him, I'm like, Have you looked at a casino?
So,
have you gone to the malls? Like, have you checked the local drive-in movie theater?
So you think the Mets were probably like, he's probably just out there partying, doing something. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's. Yeah, I mean, they could have been like, maybe he's Rodman and just decided I need a vacation. I need to go to Vegas.
Maybe so. The Mets started in their first 10 games. They're already 4 games back. Yeah. So that's why I say that he was maybe one of their last rays of hope to a lot of possible success for this team. Tom may argue different, and others that are Mets fans may argue different, but their bullpen's not good. It's just like that was like a shot to the arm for the New York Mets, and it makes me think too that it's like New York run organizations. What is it about New York run organizations? The Jets, the Giants, the Mets, the Knicks.
The Yankees take everything.
Yeah, that's it. They do.
It's you know, like how they always joke about, my brother got the brains, my sister got the looks, I got left with everything else. Like the Yankees got everything, so everybody New York got left with everything else.
Yeah, that's definitely been the case because their sports franchises as a whole, besides the Yankees, have just been a disaster. Now the Yankees weren't that great in the recent. They came back from being not so good after a long stretch of success. So they're
I think they want to forget the Joe Girardi years.
Right, exactly. So they're on the rise now again because of the talent they have, and they are good. Aaron Judge is incredible, but it's strange.
Well, and I know Cespedes obviously is the kind of the funky story, but I saw a story this weekend that, to me, draws concern right now for athletes in the pandemic, and that was let me pull up his name, get it right. Eduardo Rodriguez, the ace for the Boston Red Sox. He actually had COVID, and over the weekend had to announce that he is having to sit out the season because they tested him MRI. He actually is having a heart situation from COVID. And this is it's been almost swept under the rug. I just happened to stumble across it on ESPN, and this is like, I was like, okay, maybe it's just some schlub, so nobody cares. Guy went 19-3 last year for it was supposed to be their opening day starter, and actually looked at the numbers. He's got like a +3 for this career strikeout to walk ratio.
Yeah.
And here he is, great athlete. We all said athletes, they'll be fine. And here he is dealing with a heart issue based off of COVID and having to sit out this year. That's the worry that I've stated since March. We talk about, they're going to get antibodies, this, that, and the other. Not every athlete's going to be able to just skate through asymptomatically if they come down with it.
Yeah, we don't know for sure still what the lasting ramifications of this disease are. I mean, I think that's if anything, when people are concerned as athletes, then maybe that's the forefront of it, is not necessarily getting it, but what it could mean for my future. I think that's definitely now, if we knew for sure what it did or didn't do, you'd have a little bit more clarity. But yeah, we're sitting at a time where it's like, I don't really know, so you're going to take a risk when you get it. That kind of makes me want to bring up the point too here real quick before we get our last break is, not just Damian Williams, but NFL players. I said initially, because they're football players, in my mind, I didn't see a lot of them opting out Now, we saw 6 of them for the Patriots alone opt out, and it kind of followed a trend. Obviously, we know Chiefs had the first player to do it in the league.
Right.
And then Damian Williams followed, and other players have kind of, there's been a few that have done it. So the number already is more than I thought personally, but I guess I'll stick by this. I don't really see a bunch of like big name stars are the ones that are going to end up saying they're opting out. But were you surprised to see as many so far that have already said, I don't want to do it? I mean, I just think of like NFL players.
I don't know the total number because I didn't pay attention this past week.
But 6 on one team, too. It's
well, and I did see something yesterday that ESPN pointed out that 2 or 3 of the Patriots guys are up there in age. They had drafted to kind of replace them, either this year or next year. So kind of maybe they're opting out to save themselves from possible injury because it's a contract year or whatever, and then you can go try to sign somewhere else where they're going to have more interest in using you. So maybe that could be the case. Again, I think that was kind of the case with Damian Williams. Like, man, I can, especially I think Damian Williams to me is the easiest one to say, yeah, I get it. Of just simply football aspect. Tardif, I know some people will disagree with me, but I agree with so many people who instantly came out and said, dude already deserves the Walter Payton Man of the Year. Because he's not opting out for, I'm worried about. He's opting out because, yes, he's worried about it, but he's during his time this year, he's going to be continuing to work with COVID patients. That, to me, is leadership.
Yeah.
But with Damian Williams, to me, it's he knows he's probably going to miss out on snaps, and you're a running back in the NFL. You have a very short shelf life. Why risk, whether it's injury as a backup to a rookie when you can potentially get on? Because that's the thing, is like if he doesn't play, ultimately doesn't play this year, and somebody needs somebody next year at running back, the last memory they're going to have of him is the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's what I said, was that if his career were to end because of this decision, or at least, basically end, he might get a snap here and there, but not like he used to. And his last thing, he very well could have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. Like, that's a good legacy to leave.
I think someone's going to sign him away from the Chiefs after this year, and I think that's why, to me, again, it's smart for him. If you're thinking business terms, you don't take some tread off the tires. They've got their shiny new car that they brought in with their first pick in Hilaire, and you also you were given this as an option to opt out because of the pandemic. So, from a business aspect, to me, it makes sense for him, and I think someone will, running back, especially when you don't have to pay a whole lot for it, but maybe be able to get a decent amount of productivity, are always going to be a hot commodity in the NFL.
Yeah, he cited the reason because his mom has cancer, I believe, and that's a legitimate concern. I have to think that, I wonder what his decision would have been, though, had the Chiefs not won the Super Bowl. Like, say he had done what he did in the Super Bowl, but they still didn't find a way to win.
Or even better, if they wouldn't have drafted Hilaire.
Right.
If he was the lock-in number one running back, would he still?
Exactly. But even then, it's like I kind of curious, because I wondered how they would mix that backfield with him and Edwards-Hilaire, but now they won't really have to worry about that. So, there's different sides of it, but I respect, obviously, his decision. He knows his family more than I do. When we come back, you thought the XFL was gone? Well, hold on. It might not actually be gone. We'll talk about that next. The afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler and Jason Elmquist here with you as we wrap it up on a Monday. Well, we thought at one point the XFL was a distant memory, albeit a good one, a distant memory, and maybe not the case. As reports come out today that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is part of a group of people that is trying to officially buy the XFL for $15 million.
They've reached an agreement, and according to the story, it's, I think, end of this week, next week, that bankruptcy court has to approve the sale still.
Yeah.
But as of now,
it looks like it should happen. I think this is a big win because the XFL, the product was overall pretty good. They lacked at the quarterback position. Obviously, we know that. I think that's one thing that obviously the Rock is going to have to focus on. Okay, when he gets this going, one of the main issues needs to be, like main focal points needs to be, let's get some more known names that want to come back and play football. Let's persuade some college kids.
Not just names, talent.
Let's get some. Does this become a little bit more like the G League situation a little bit?
And that's when they first announced it a year ago, that was something that I discussed of, I think they should go after that.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, in two aspects of that would be beneficial. Obviously, you wouldn't have this rule of you have to play 3 years of college ball, whatever. If some athletes need the money right away, they have that opportunity. But at the college level, it also bring a little bit more, maybe closer to basketball, where there's some parity, because right now there's no parity in football. There's not.
That's true.
You know why OU football was picked to win the Big 12 title again, even though they're going to be starting a quarterback who has zero college experience?
Yeah.
It's because there's no parity in college football right now.
Right.
So that, I think, would help in that regard. But I like this move because if anything's told us, The Rock is great at reinvigorating franchises.
Yeah.
He did it with Jumanji. He did it with actually one of the first ones he did was the G.I. Joe's movies. He did it obviously with the Fast and Furious movies.
That's right.
I mean, he has, honestly, he has also kind of invigorated HBO with that Baller series, because up until then, it was like Entourage was still pretty popular, but it was off the scene for a year or two. You didn't have The Sopranos. Like, everyone was just kind of like HBO. It's like, unless you were a diehard Game of Thrones fan, like, there wasn't anything on HBO that really a casual person liked. And then Ballers hits the scene with The Rock, and everyone loved it.
Yeah.
Sports fans and non-sports fans.
Yeah, and I think the response to the XFL originally was good. I mean, it's probably, let's be honest, the only spring football that will ever work, really. And it did. I think that, like I said, the talent kind of has to be elevated a little bit, but the interest was there. Yeah, the ratings were going down a little bit towards when they finally had to quit because of the coronavirus, but they were still pretty encouraging for a startup league like it was. I never saw it as like the AAF.
Right.
It was never like that. It was like its own different. I think the rule changes were intriguing. The transparency amongst players to media to coaches was interesting.
And weirdly enough, I felt that the talent was better than the AAF.
No, I think so too.
And I think some of that was because it was maybe younger talent, where AAF was kind of your, guys who have been in the NFL for 6 or 7 years and still wanted that last grasp at glory, where the AAF was, your Taylor Cornelius,
right.
Your guys who are a year or two removed from college, who didn't get really a lot of attention at the combines or at their pro days, and then went out and showed that they balled, like the Houston quarterback and the St. Louis quarterback. I mean, they instantly got swooped up.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, wow, what would have happened to their trajectory if the XFL wasn't there? And it makes you wonder over the years now, how many of those guys could have, almost like a Kurt Warner type a guy that all he needed was arena league football. Mm-hmm. Well, all these guys needed with XFL to get that opportunity to find their way into the NFL by a new conventional way.
This is a new way that's not the CFL. I mean, you can stay within the states. You can stay in big states, that in big cities, and play in front of. They were bringing crowds in.
Yeah.
Here's my solution. You ready to get the XFL going back up? Whatever team, I don't care where it is. Probably you put it in Houston. You put it in the Texas. They have Houston teams. I think the only Texas team they have. You put it down in there.
No, they had Dallas as well.
Dallas as well.
Yeah, because Bob Stoops ran that one.
Right. So either one, you talk to Johnny Manziel and you get him to come be your quarterback.
God, he wasn't that good of a quarterback.
No. But just for interest, okay?
No.
Yeah, think about it.
No.
People would gravitate to the XFL.
I would, on principle, not watch the XFL if Johnny Manziel was
there
in
would
it.
be a lot that would, though. You have to admit.
No.
I think so. That would be one of the names where if they said the XFL is coming back and they went to Houston, they said Johnny Manziel is your starting quarterback.
Did I not say bring talent in?
You
need to bring talent in. At quarterback,
talent.
you need to bring
Let's
talent
switch it up, though. Let's mix it with talent and big names as well. Can we do that? I mean, I think that if
Landry Jones wasn't a big enough name for you. He actually played. He actually won more games in the NFL, I think, than
probably
Manziel.
But it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't big enough. Okay, you gotta up it up a little bit. Bring Tim Tebow back too. Why not? Just name wise. Now,
isn't he still in the Mets organization?
Is he still really? I think he
thought
is.
so. Yeah. I don't think he's in the taxi squad or anything.
Yeah, but that's,
last I knew, he was meddling.
How long
with the
before
Mets.
he gives up that dream?
Yeah,
I mean, we're almost to that point. Bring names like that, like quarterbacks that once were that guy, and but also find a way for talent, because no one really. Let's be honest, the average fan didn't hear of Jordan Ta'amu, and he became really good.
And that's the thing. That's why I say bring in talent. You don't need a big name. You bring a talented guy in, he's going to make his name, and then people will gravitate towards him. That's, again, the Houston team was widely popular across the country because of the talent they had at quarterback. Mm-hmm. Even though nobody, to this day, I still don't know his name.
P.J. Washington, I think?
Something like that. Yeah. Somebody that Andrew Luck told his dad, hey, you guys need to allow him into the XFL.
Right.
And he made his name by being talented. That's what you need at quarterback. You don't need a Landry Jones who is washed out of the NFL. You need someone who is going to be young, vibrant. You need you need a Patrick Mahomes for the XFL.
Yeah, I don't think there has...
Because keep in mind, Patrick Mahomes was not a big name coming out of college.
Right. I don't think there necessarily has to be a huge... kind of like the AAF was. Let's bring these last chance guys back and see what they have. I don't know if you could mix it in and ultimately get a chance at finding a lot more people to watch, but I will say this too. Think about it, for instance, with St. Louis, right? We talked to Dan about it that one time. They lost out on a football team. A team was back, and they came out like crazy. They were selling out the dome. I mean, people were going to watch this thing. So I think it was on a trajectory of really good success.
Yeah.
It was something I really felt bad for that league when it had to do what it had to do.
Right.
At this time, it
couldn't predict a pandemic. Yeah.
It wasn't expecting it, and it was unique enough to where I thought, you know what? To me, it could succeed down the road if someone were to pick it up. I'm glad Dwayne Johnson is doing this, and hopefully it works out, because the XFL was fun. I mean, it was a time where, and little did we know, we were experiencing so much football. It was like, wow, this is great for the football fan. Football really never has to end. If you think about it with the XFL, well, we all know what happened. We'd give anything for a football game. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think it was really entertaining, obviously, and something that can be brought back. Okay, while we're on this topic real quick here, let's switch it over because we only got a couple minutes left. The Lou Williams story. So you saw all of it, right? So...
Yeah, I there might be more to it. I don't know, but the stuff I've seen is pretty layered.
Okay, so first of all, I admitted, right, like I'm pretty much into the hip-hop scene, not all of it. Never heard of Jack Harlow before, okay? He's the guy that was the rapper that was with Lou Williams that took the photo, had the photo taken, whatever, posted it. And initially, Jack Harlow tried to say, like, that was an old photo. And everyone was like, dude, you guys are wearing masks. Like, when in the past did you go to a strip club? And so, obviously, that was not the case.
Yeah.
Lou Williams gets an opportunity here, right? A rare chance to get out of the bubble for a funeral. And on his way back, stops at Magic City for what he claimed were the wings only.
Yep.
It is then discovered that he has actually frequented Magic City so much that the lemon pepper wings are actually named after him on the menu. Lemon Pepper Lou here. Okay. It's a real thing. It was like a day or two later, a picture of the actual wings surfaced on social media. And I got to show you these because a lot of people were like, okay, Lou, these things looked immaculate. Okay. It was like, maybe we get it. But the whole time that he was trying to sell it it was just a wings thing. The stripper then rats him out, is like, no, he tipped me. This wasn't just a wings thing. Again, it was like, this is a really funny story, but oh my gosh, why in the world would you take the chance?
What's funny is you go back to that Friday where you were on Robert's show, and it was Levi and I during the afternoon. We did our NBA award winners. And my sixth man of the year, I went with Lou Williams. And when I saw that, because it happened like on Sunday or Monday of last week, text Levi. I was like, legendary sixth man of the year right here.
Look, that was the thing too. I was like, you know what? It'd be one thing if he was like sitting on the Suns or some worthless team.
Yeah,
but he's the sixth
he's a
man.
huge contributor for a
huge contributor
playoff.
For
A championship
contending team. Okay,
Yeah.
he is a big part. And they were sitting at the time as seed. They were a couple games off. It's like of a higher seed, like better chance of the playoffs. Like this was important. He had to miss. He lost $100,000 missing a couple games. And I'm like, that might have been the most expensive strip club appearance that he's ever made.
Correction, expensive wings.
Yeah. I was like, I did that story. It almost also made me think at that time. I was like, hey, sports though, like they're back. Like stories like this means sports are back. Lou Williams.
And I ask, if we can't get adults making millions of dollars willing to stay in a bubble, how are college athletes going to do the same?
I mean, I'm worried by that only because I really, really, really thought that the majority, and I think the majority is probably still doing it, but almost everyone would be like, I'm going to take this serious. It's going to be like, that's just not the case. And I'm like, what do we do to fix this thing? How is it going to work for college football players? Bottom line, I've come to this. It's going to be everybody, just like Bob Bowles, we said the other day, the Big 12 is going to hinder, a season is going to hinder on these guys being disciplined, period. Now, I know that this has probably been put into their head since the beginning, but...
And that's why, to come full circle, the Pac-12 athletes understand that the ball's in their court. No, they ultimately decide if there's a season.
They've used
so they're utilizing that. They don't have a union to make the case for them. So do I agree with all of them? No, but at the same time, that's the thing we have to understand, especially the older generations like Tom. I know they're upset with stuff like this, but this is a different breed of athletes.
Yeah,
and they are learning something that athletes never learned prior to now. They're the ones in charge.
Yeah, it's a big leverage move. Bottom line, it really is. And then,
as much as you want to say, well, they're kids, they shouldn't be in charge. If a quarterback, if your starting quarterback doesn't want to play, then he doesn't want to play.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Coach doesn't have any say on that.
No. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. That's Jason Elmquist. I'm Patrick Wheeler. We'll be back here tomorrow, same place, same time. Thanks for listening. Have a great Monday. We'll see you back here.